If you're interested in sea kayaking, this video is for you. Even more so if you're interested in kayak expeditioning, meaning going out for a number of days, exploring, with your gear along in the kayak, tents, food, water, all the things you need to stay overnight and go kayak camping, maybe in the archipelago, on islands out at sea, or along the coast, or even on a large lake. In all cases, this can be a fantastic experience, and in this video I will use a trip from early August 2025 where I and two other kayak leaders took a group out through the Swedish Outdoor Association and had a fantastic time exploring new archipelago areas and just enjoying the beauty that is sea and seawater and particular nature out there. It can be so rewarding. If you are an experienced paddler, you know this already. In this case, what might be interesting for you in this video is the leadership perspective. How a trip like this is organized through, in our case, the Swedish Outdoor Association, which is a large organization in Sweden where I am a kayak leader. If you're newer to this concept, sea kayaking, or kayak expeditioning at least, then it might also be a bit of inspiration in terms of what it means to go out there and how a trip like this is organized and how you can have this kind of adventure. The thing is that if you're newer to this, some go out with friends, more experienced paddlers might go out alone, which needs special safety precautions. But a great way to have this experience in a safe and comfortable way is to go out as part of an organized group trip activity. What organization that might be varies, depends on where you live and what's more convenient for you. But here in Sweden, where I live, the Swedish Outdoor Association is one of those organizations that offers adventures, not only in terms of paddling. There are tons of outdoor activities in many different formats. Everything from mountain biking to ice skating to hikes in the forest and, kayaking in this case. So yes, I am a kayak leader in the Swedish Outdoor Association. My name is Patrik Vuorio and I belong to a local branch called Friluftsfrämjandet Norrviken in the larger Stockholm area. And here I and two other kayak leaders, Bengt and Stina, are out in the archipelago, and we are leading this very, very nice group. Actually, we had a great time this early weekend in August. Still warm, summer weather definitely, but it was quite windy. So we had to adjust our route a bit in terms of what we had initially hoped in terms of the trip. We adjusted to be a little bit safer, to stay a little bit with more shelter from islands, etc. It would have been too windy and too heavy in terms of waves and open passages to go as far as we had hoped initially. And this is part of the work of kayak leaders. If you're interested in how a trip like this is organized, then this is part of what I will try and discuss in this video. Basically, from a kayak leader's perspective, what does an adventure like this look like? And what surprised me when I became a kayak leader, in a positive sense, is how much planning actually goes into an adventure like this. It depends, of course, depending on which organization you're paddling with, but I'll talk about this from the Swedish outdoor perspective. And this is not an official video in any case, in any way from the Swedish Outdoor Association, Friluftsfrämjandet. It's just my personal kayak leader experience, and I am also a coordinating leader for the local branch in terms of kayaking activities, grenledare, vatten och paddling, in Friluftsfrämjandet Norrviken, which I belong to, which means I also help oversee and coordinate other kayak trips and activities that other kayak leaders organized. So that is really helpful. That's new for this year. It's helpful for me because I get a sense of many different adventures and how they are organized. And in this case, it was a matter of organizing this nice trip, but again, on a windy day. You don't see it all that much here, even though it's clearly windy and a bit of chop. But if we had gone further out, as initially considered, it would have been substantially more complicated. And that is one thing you do as a kayak leader, as a group of kayak leaders, long before the trip, even before the trip is actually announced. You plan the intended area you want to explore and potential routes and different options, actually, depending on what weather you might have. And in this case, our route, the more efficient version of it anyway, included this open passage of a number of kilometers over open water. And that's something that you can do with the group that we had here, because in this group we had a lot of really experienced kayakers, a lot of them technically skilled and with a lot of experience actually in the group. And then a passage like this, especially where we have the waves just against us, is not really much concern, and it's within our safety parameters. But if this had been a group of relatively new kayakers without really the paddling skills that you need to get out on choppy water safely like this, then this wouldn't only have been uncomfortable or perhaps a bit scary for some, it would have been really inappropriate and not at all correct safety-wise. So that's something you measure as kayak leaders. You adapt even on the days itself, every day and every part of every day. You adapt your route and your plans depending on how the weather turns out. But long before that, again, there is an assessment. In our case, we have a safety plan that goes into different kinds of risks and the ability and the expected ability of the participants, which is clearly announced in the adventure online as well, that if you're supposed to join us on this adventure, you need to have paddling skills of this and this nature, and you need to be able to paddle this and this far at this and this speed during a day, and of course you need to be able to swim. In our case, the basic requirement is 200 meters at the minimum as a standard feature, and then in some cases you need to be able to peer rescue, meaning help rescue someone else in their kayak. That was appropriate here, for example, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot going into this just in terms of weather and planning and shelter, locations and backup routes, and so much that actually goes into the plan for this. That's about making the adventure safe. It's also about making the adventure enjoyable. And that goes also as to where we're gonna stay for the night. Is there a good location where we can set up tents for a group of our size? In this case, it's about a dozen people, and that's easy in some areas, more difficult in others. Another aspect is, as you can see on the right there, ferry or boat traffic, which can be a significant risk if managed improperly. So there are ways that you cross certain passages, certain stretches of water. You do that in an organized group setting, and you try to keep the group together reasonably close. And if you're going straight across, basically a boat fairway, then you will keep the group even closer, etc. And all the time, what happens from a leader perspective is that you have a leader in front here. You can see Stina way up there in front. And in our case, we always have a leader at the back. In this case, my leader called Bengt is in the rear position there, keeping an eye on the paddlers. And I am the third paddler in this case, keeping an eye out and positioning myself where I think might be needed. Oftentimes, you might place the leaders in a triangle so that the leader in front, that means that one leader is kind of far out to the side and one leader is at the back and one leader is at the front. And then it's easier to look at each other if you need to and communicate visually or whatnot if there's something that's going on. In this case, we're a little bit more relaxed about that because we're actually carrying communication radios and we can talk amongst each other. And for those that are behind the main leader, they can kind of read the body language of the leader in front. And if there's some kind of indication of something going wrong, then they're able to react. And the idea is that no participants should be behind, or at least further than immediately next to the leader at the back. That means that we're always keeping an eye on the group, and the leader in the front is doing the navigation, basically. Choosing appropriate routes and adapting to wind and boat traffic, and also making decisions based on how the participants are feeling. So if you are participating in a group like this and you're feeling tired, or something is painful, or something is uncomfortable, or you need really to adjust your footrests or your seat or something, well, look at that, a bit of a surprise participant in the group. I think this was officially the black sheep of our group, you could say, during that moment. Well, that's the fun of the archipelago, right? Or paddling in general. You always see some unexpected or new stuff. And it's beautiful. I mean, being out on open sea, like someone mentioned on my YouTube channel recently, just being out there and seeing the waves and the freedom of being out on open water, there's something particular to it that is really good for the soul. It's really relaxing and rewarding and gives you energy. But anyway, yeah, if you are a participant and you're feeling that something is off, don't be a silent hero. You're not being a hero, you're being a potential problem. If something is uncomfortable, it's better to say that straight away, especially as you're starting off your trip. But responsible leaders will also take breaks every now and then along the way and gather everybody and check that everybody's doing okay. And if something is off, if something is uncomfortable, if you're in pain or just tired, or you need to drink water, which the leader should also remind you of, or have some snacks, then speak up, just so that you're in good shape to keep paddling. Maybe there's a good opportunity to go ashore somewhere and adjust your kayak so you can continue along in a comfortable way. That's really important. And good leaders will take good care of that. Let's take a look at a few photos from the trip. Here there's a bit of this overview that we have every day. Or every stretch of the paddle, maybe just showing where we'll be paddling, the route, etc. And all that information, all that communication, it's teamwork basically. Because during your sea kayaking trip, you become a team effectively. And just like my fellow leaders here, depending on which position I have at the moment in the group, whether I'm in front or whether I'm on the side or whether I'm at the back, I will be keeping an eye on participants as a leader, and my fellow leaders will do the same, especially then the leaders that are a little further back. And eventually the goal is of course to reach our stop for the night. Planning your overnight potential locations is an important part of a sea kayaking expedition, and more important even the longer the trip goes on, the more days you're paddling, because you don't want to be tired at the end of the day and really have to spend hours looking for a suitable location to set up your tents, either because the spots that you had intended to use were busy, or somehow they weren't appropriate because of wind or weather or whatever. That is something that is good to check on the map way in advance, just so you have different options and also backup options to retreat or to shorten your route or to change your route if the weather changes. And you should always be checking that weather forecast. And that's something that leaders do continuously throughout a trip like this. In this case, our overnight location worked really nicely. We also adapted our trip successfully in the sense that it was actually really windy on especially the first day, but because of the route that we eventually chose, we had a lot of wind protection from islands during much of our paddling, especially here on day 2 we're really protected because the wind is coming from the south on both days, and this island that we have to our left there, to the left is south, and that means this large long island will be providing a lot of wind shelter from the open sea, and that made a huge difference on this second day, and even on the first day we really just had that long open passage where we had to work a little bit more. Otherwise we were fairly protected. If we had made less intelligent choices, let's say, we could have had a very stressful and hard work based paddling trip. And ultimately, if you're looking for that, if you're looking for the challenge, that's fine. But if you're in an organized group trip like this, people are probably out there to enjoy a little bit of waves, of course, and a little bit of chop and see. But for the most part, in this case, it's about the nature experience and just having good food, good company, enjoying the seawater, enjoying nature, and the route you take makes a huge difference. And on this second day, we really did have a really enjoyable day for the most part, even if it was quite windy further out. And we would be feeling this a little bit when we headed back the final stretch where we had the wind against us. And then that was a good indication that we had made good choices on the day. So basically, we had a much more comfortable trip because the leaders in this case have made good decisions. And in this case, we're heading back. It was a short expedition, just 2 days. So a weekend trip, convenient for many. Even if you're working, you can often get off for a full weekend and then just enjoy this archipelago. And many paddlers had not been in this archipelago before. I had actually been here only once, and only in the areas most close to the town where we're paddling now, and basically not having visited the islands further out. So it was a great experience for me as well. In this case, the town where we're headed, which is Trosa in Sörmland county in Sweden on the east coast. It's a coastal town. Another participant briefly in our group here. Cows you will see every now and then. But anyway, yeah, normally you might organize a trip like this to go out into the archipelago, at least where we are, because the archipelago areas here are great. And then you might just be exploring the islands, and that is beautiful, and it's nature, and it's good enough. But the purpose of this trip was a little bit different. We did get out there, and we did have a really good archipelago paddle among the islands, and we saw the sea and open Baltic Sea further out, etc. But in this case, I had actually come up with this particular route because I had paddled a number of years before in this charming town called Trosa. And there's a river there going through the town, which allows paddlers to explore the town from the water. And it's got this old feel to it, and it's particularly charming. So in this case, I wanted to basically add a different experience than what is usually the case in these kind of expeditions. And that's also a nice thing to think about as a leader. If there are particularly interesting locations along the way that you can make sure to showcase and visit, in a way you're a guide on the water, right? So you want to make sure that your group has a good experience, not just in terms of paddling and conditions and whatnot. And nature is beautiful in and of itself, but if you do have knowledge of the area, then of course particularly interesting sections with beautiful greenery areas or rocks or whatever features that are particularly interesting. It might be an old lighthouse or it might be something else. That is a bonus for the trip. And in this case, we weren't really sure about whether our participants would appreciate this river paddling section. It was kind of made optional, like it depends on the group and the energy and whatever. But enough people actually requested it as part of our planning for the second day. Like you kind of have to. You promised that we would see this town, and yeah, I don't think we were disappointed. It is a particularly beautiful old town that is well worth visiting on foot and on the water. So we did, and I won't show it too much here because I did make a video before showing this river paddling experience, so I'll link that at the end. If you're interested, I welcome you to have a look at that as well. But anyway, in your sea kayaking adventure, if you do have local expertise, by all means use that. And in this case, we did have that. I, as a leader, could rely on Bengt, one of my fellow leaders, for a lot of local knowledge. I actually had the local knowledge of this area, the town and the nearby island, whereas he had knowledge of the islands further out, including our campsite and such, which is tremendously helpful for planning. So obviously you use that, and with then Stina, who is the other kayak leader, actually has a lot of experience in terms of, more than both of us, in terms of sea kayaking as a kayak leader and planning and such. And together as leaders you put your experience together and make the best of it, and it worked really nicely here. Basically Bengt and I were actually in the same group when we were kayak leaders in training. So we both started as official kayak leaders at the same time. And Stina has been a kayak leader for much longer and was actually my mentor during that time. So it was great to paddle together. And even as a leader, frankly, you do have a lot of focus on the group. You are not as relaxed as other participants because you're always keeping an eye on the entire group and trying to anticipate potential issues that come up, especially when things get windy and people are tired. Like here at the end of our paddle, we knew that we would have the wind against us again, and it was clear there was going to be a little bit more. Nothing really to note here. I mean, we're just heading back towards where we started, and it's still relatively sheltered. But at this point, after a couple of days, when people are tired, the risk is higher. Plus, you have these unexpected things, like there. I was near that dock, and all of a sudden this huge dog comes running and barking, and it could have technically jumped out on my kayak if it had wanted to. And that's not something I've really seen before, but I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, and that would have been an interesting situation. But anyway, as leaders, you do have a lot of preparation for things like this. You do have first aid kits and repair kits and a lot of plans, and again the safety plan, so you are ready for what may come. But anyway, these are a few words on what a sea kayaking expedition might look like. And from the leader perspective, if you're interested in this, I'll be publishing a lot more on this YouTube channel, Air on the Water. Welcome to subscribe. And like the video and comment if you have questions or want to share your experience. And to those who participated, thank you. It was a great group, a great weekend, and a really good trip. And there's also a sea kayaking video playlist on this channel, which you're welcome to check out. So, in all cases, be safe out there, happy paddles, and if you go sea kayaking, have an awesome trip, because sea kayaking is generally awesome. All the best, stay safe out there again, and happy paddles.